Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. So today we are going to talk about Terraform, how enterprise is going to use, and I'm going to talk about specific use case today, how enterprise is going to use a Terraform in one of the cloud platform, which is an AWS. So a lot of enterprises have been using Terraform in many ways for many cloud providers like AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean, and on-premise of VMware, and a lot. But one specific use case which I'm going to talk about is how enterprises are using Terraform to deploy at different environments. So, in my experience, I saw a lot of PaaS and SaaS products. If they want to deploy in different environments for different customers, so they have to deploy all the resources like a VPC, a subnet, a routing table, internet gateway, and attaching this internet gateway to one of the routing table which they want to expose to a public subnet. So, kind of this. So in other use cases, Terraform might be using to deploy in existing VPCs, existing resources using it. But now in today's session, I'm going to talk about how you can use Terraform to deploy from scratch. So the other use case which I can think about this kind of deployment is about like if any instance is exposed to vulnerability, and if they want to do a post-mortem, so it needs an isolated environment. So for those kind of environments, if I want to create quickly, so you can use Terraform for using this deployment model. And other environment models or deployment models were if you want to deploy like test, dev, non-prod, and sandbox or production. If you want to set up different AWS accounts for each one of these environments, so during that point also you can use this deployment model. So there are a lot many use cases with this kind of deployment model. So let's stay tuned for to go through a little hands-on with including the code. And I created a public repository for this code, so I'm going to share that in the video description. Please kindly go through it, and I'm going to show you hands-on how we are going to use this Terraform, and at the same time basics of Terraform. I'm going to start with it in terms of how you're going to use Terraform init, Terraform plan, Terraform apply, and different set of Terraform files like main.tf or variables.tf or terraform.tf variables. So all this I'm going to give a detailed lab. So stay tuned, and followed by you can see my lab session.
As discussed, now I'm going to show you how to create an instance in Farm new AWS account with all required resources using Terraform. As I described at starting of this session, the use cases of this deployment is pretty much with the different organizations when they're trying to set up different environments. So let's look into it. While doing this session, I'll try to give as much as details about Terraform at initial phase, how you can start from now itself, kind of invitation. So let's see that. First, you need to look at, a lot of people might say main.tf. So here, this is what my resource file, which I would like to create. So what is exactly Terraform main.tf? So actually, it is a configuration file which we are going to use in Terraform when you are trying to create resources, or when you want to update it, or when you want to delete it. So actually, this main.tf is a main entry point for Terraform to define the resources. And at the same time, in this main.tf, you can specify the provider you want to use. Like here, I mentioned AWS. You can mention Azure or GCP or any other provider where you would like to deploy resources, like virtual machines, load balancer, for storage accounts, however you want. And at the same time, like this is where you define the infrastructure which you are want to create, update, or delete in a declarative way. So that's the best part out of this main.tf. Here I'm calling AWS EC2 for my quick reference. And then I have a terraform.tf where. So this is where I'm going to provide values for my key pairs or key value pairs. So before jumping into, I'll talk about these variables. Then I'm going to talk about that so that it will be much easier for you. So here, variables of TF is basically where you can define input variables for your infrastructure code. What does that mean is, just look at here. Here I'm providing some of the variables. No VPC ID. So this is I'm getting from above. Or if I go inside it here, if you look at C variable dot number of instances and variable dot instance type, and these are all the variables which I defined in my variables STF. If I look at here, see this access key, secret key which have been defined, and instance name, instance type, and number of instances, AMID, public key path. So these are all the variables which I defined so that more granular I can control how this needs to be deployed. And every time when I want to do change, rather touching my main file, I can actually these values control much better using these two variables as TF. So here, if you look at the default values I provided here, but if you want these values to be overwritten and and I want to customize values to be provided, then that's where Terraform.tf vars will get into place. So what exactly this Terraform.tf is, whatever values for variables you defined here in variables.tf, corresponding values you have to define in the Terraform.tf vars. So that's basically the job of Terraform.tf vars. Okay. And at the same time, people might get confused on what is these variables of TF and Terraform.tf vars. To quickly, make sure you understand, keep it in mind, variable of TF is where you define your variables, and Terraform.tf vars where you define values for these, variables. So that's what to make it more the difference between these two, and to keep it make simple. So these are the three files which is predominantly needed. Or if you are want to deploy using a default values, then you don't need Terraform.tfs. But with my experience, what I can say is defining a segregation of these values, variables, and your resources and three different files would be a much granular way you can control it, you can manage it. That's the benefit of these files. And now let's see. Jump into how I can deploy these resources. And at the same time, let me show you a few of my AWS account, where I want to deploy it, where I really don't have resources which on it. So let me quickly show my screen of my AWS account. So if you look at here, right, guys, here in my AWS account, I really don't have, this is a brand new account. And if you look at in my US East 1 resources, I don't have EC2, I don't have a VPC. I'll show you here. So if you look at here in my EC2 dashboard, none of the instances are in running state in US East, which is not Virginia. And if you look at VPC, this is the default VPC, which when you create AWS account, this default VPC will be created. So we usually don't use this VPC. So this is the brand new VPC. So let's start initializing and deploying the resources so that it will be easy for us to look at. So for the first time, whether you clone this from a repository, which I'm going to keep the repository link in the description of this video, or else if you want to writing for the first time of the directory, you need to start with Terraform init. What exactly the Terraform init is, which is going to initialize your Terraform, and at the same time, what are the plugins or providers required, which you mentioned here, right? In this case, with AWS, those will be downloaded for the first time. So that's why Terraform init is important for you to download and to creating the plugins under it as you need the required providers. And if you look at here, I have only 3 files right now, but as soon as I run this Terraform init, it is going to see, look at it is initializing backend, and it is actually initializing the provider plugins. So in my case, HashiCorp AWS, which is a AWS plugin, which see, as soon as you run this successfully, see, these files got created. .terraform. Here it is the providers info. Let's open. Now, this is Terraform information, and this folder will be created, and this is the Terraform lock for HCL will be going created. Okay, so that's basically this file has been deemed for us, and now my Terraform init has been run successfully. Now, one of the advantage of Terraform is, before you deploy, you can basically find out which resource is going to deploy. So that's where, you know, Terraform plan is Terraform plan will help us to look at if we look at one more thing, when I run Terraform plan, it is going to show me, see, 8 to be added, 0 to be changed, and 0 to be destroyed. That means 8 resources are going to create now. What are those 8 resources? If you scroll up, it's going to show us. Let me show you. See here, this is going to be EC2 instance is going to create it, and EBS block device, which is required for it, and which is also part of an EC2. And next is AWS Internet Gateway, because I'm going to create a new VPC and I want to attach that to a new VPC. And ECS key pair is going to create, and routing table, because this is required by the VPC, and which I'm creating a routing table association, the public subnet, and security group I'm creating it. And if you look at here, and subnet I'm going to create, and finally it is a VPC which I'm going to create. So basically here, if you look at your main file, here I'm creating a new VPC, new internet gateway, whatever your resource you've been defined here, those are all going to create. So make sure before you actually run the Terraform apply, make sure you are being validate what resource are creating as you expected. So whatever mentioned in your main.tf, in my case AWS EC2.tf, is all going to create. So let's look at Terraform apply. So as soon as you run the Terraform apply, see here one more important point we would like to make it. So this is going to create a TF state file. I'm going to discuss more about the state files in coming sessions, but Terraform state file is about when you're deploying this stack, all the resources created by Terraform state will be managed and updated in this Terraform state file. So that's the importance of this Terraform state at this point of time. Of course, we will talk about how these can be stored local or remote or shared location. We'll discuss detail in coming sessions. But to look at here again, it is when you run the Terraform apply, it ran plan and it is saying 8 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy, and it's asking for the confirmation. If you look at, you want to perform these actions, Terraform will perform these actions described above. Only yes will accept, do, approve it. So this is, if you type yes, it is going to create the resources, or at least it will start creating the resources. But you might have a question: so how when you are automating it, every time you want to, type this yes, not necessary. But initial phases, when during your practice or during you want to test it, I want you to run in this way. But if you want to really automate, then you can mention auto approve. What happens is auto approve flag is option. It's not going to ask for confirmation, rather it's going to start deploying it immediately when you run this command. So when I run this, it created the Terraform TS state file, and it's haven't asked me a confirmation, rather it started deploying the resources. It might take a couple of minutes for this resource to deploy, but during that point, let's see, it started, it created the key pair, it created the VPC. Now let's go and explore in our AWS console how this resource has been created. Now it asked me VPC. I can show you that, let me go to VPC, let me refresh this. See, earlier I had only one VPC, now I have a second VPC created. And if I go to root subnets, additional subnets were created. See this one. This is the additional subnet CIDR which have been mentioned, and internet gateway. See now my new internet gateway got created and routing tables associate. So this basically is creating all the resources. Now go to EC2 instance. Now if I refresh this, see now it should be creating. See now earlier it was 0. Now I go to instances, running instances. Now my EC initializing. So status X. So my EC2 instance is planning deploy over here. So one more other point, it is actually set up your key pair also. Now if you look at here, so this is my key pair, EC2 Linux key pair, which has been created and assigned to this. So using that key pair, you should be able to log in into that machine. So the machine is ready now. Now let's see how I'm going to connect this. So now I need a public IP for this instance. Let's try to log in. Message. See, with since I deployed Ubuntu, which is yes. See here it is. My EC2 instance got created. See, Ubuntu one is created, so which is uptime. If you look at here, so it just came about 2 minutes earlier. So this is how the EC2 instance got created. Now let's go back to our Terraform code. See, the Terraform state file got created. So in the state file, it mentions what all have it. So it is going to have the resource details in the plain language. The current state of your resources will be saved over here. So all this is mentioned. Now, if this Terraform state file got corrupted, if this Terraform state file want to access by somebody else, or if multiple developers are working on the same environment, how they can access the Terraform state. So the Terraform state have a very importance in the entire code. So I'll take a separate session on this Terraform state in coming sessions. It will definitely help us to see the enterprise, especially how we implement the Terraform in real time. So this is, guys, which will all the resources got created and all the stack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this repository in a public repo, and I'm going to paste that GitHub URL in the description of this video. So kindly go through and you can leverage this session to make deploy. Now look at the resource got created. Now let's see how we can destroy these resources. As we have auto approve for Terraform plan, even for Terraform destroy, we have a plan. We have an auto approve, but before running that, let's run only Terraform destroy without auto approve and see, what all resources is trying to delete. See, it is going to destroying all these resources which got created as part of this stack. And 0 to add, 0 to change, but 8 to destroy. If you remember, 8 resources we created. Now it is destroying 8 resources. So while destroying, I don't recommend to run your auto approve until the cautiously. So better to run without auto approve so that you can look at what resources we're deleting or destroying, then you can actually run the destroy, or else you can just type S here. So it is planning to delete all the required resources which got created. Now it's deleting all the resources which has been mentioned as part of the Terraform apply. So each instance still destroying because it takes little time. Now let's go to AWS console and see. Now if I refresh, the running instances were no more, so it got terminated the instance. And VPC, if I go here, see the VPC also got created. So now if I go back to my code, then you can see here all the resources, destroy completed resources, 8 got destroyed. Now let's check the Terraform state file. Now you see that it doesn't have any resource details. Earlier it used to have. So that's what these Terraform init, Terraform apply, Terraform destroy is the basic commands which will help you to start. And today we learned as a consolidate what the main.tf or what is the terraform.tf vars and what is variables.tf. And again, how you can use Terraform init, Terraform apply, Terraform destroy with auto approve or without auto approve. So this is what we look at. And at the same time, we have initially of this video, we learned that what are the use cases of creating all the required resources in a single Terraform stack, basically, which we explained the different use cases. I hope this session helped you to start your Terraform transformation or Terraform learning curve. I'll see you in the next section. Thank you. Have a great day.